The exponential rise in popularity within the ski community has led to the development of unique ski resorts around the world. Early ski resort design in the 1950s and 1960s were for the most part uneducated. Construction was introduced in environmentally sensitive areas that were not widely understood. The first school of thought that was applied to design within the mountains was transplanted flatland design. This approach maintained that design was universal. Buildings do not change to reflect the existing environment. The first buildings that were implemented into the mountain landscape were designed in the international style, meaning that the structure is an isolated object set in a strong natural environment in order to contrast nature. This was supposed to maintain the integrity of the land because the isolated building was visibly subordinate to the environment. However, the further development of adjacent land was built under the same premise, with isolation in mind. As projects began to neighbor one another, nature started to become an inferior landscape because the infrastructure was operating autonomously, destroying the clarity between our urban lives and the feeling of escape we seek at resorts. The other approach to resort design in the mountains was alternative lifestyles. In the late 1960s, designers living in resort communities began to notice the clash between built and natural forms, and started to design projects that would adhere to the pristine landscape. Site users, regions, and natural elements were reflected in their design so that the land could accommodate its visitors as best as possible. By the 1970s, tourism was one of the largest industries in the world. Mountain development had begun to mature thanks to the success and failures of previously designed resorts. Future development was not unprecedented. Designers study how to create attractive villages with active and pleasant outdoor spaces, memorable images, and design frameworks for profitability. By the 1980s, some very good resort environments had been created.
Welcome to Manning Provincial Park in beautiful British Columbia. I'm here at the Manning Park Resort, located 2 hours east of Vancouver. The resort is home to a number of activities and amenities, perfect for the family or a large group of people. At Manning Park, they have accommodations for groups of all sizes. For larger groups, they have chalets, and for smaller groups, they have cabins such as these. Accommodations at Manning Park also include a hotel, where there's a restaurant and 40 guest rooms.
Over the years, Manning Park has housed many individuals that come from all over the world to enjoy the resort. However, with a lot of people comes a lot of recycling and a lot of garbage. So, to manage this issue, Manning Park has implemented these recycling bins around the park to manage the waste that is produced and also brought to the park.
When I think about the garbage, and I see people that'll drive in and they'll bring their garbage and put it in the garbage can, we have to truck all of that garbage out of here.
To learn more about waste management at Manning Park Resort, we sat down with Mike Barker, the general manager of the park, to further discuss the matter.
And we were talking about trying to put some signs up for our guests saying, if you bring it in, take it back with you. Because most of these places have curbside recycling programs at home. So, at a campground, you've got just a ton of garbage after a long weekend. Yeah, it's all been brought up here. So then we get talking about, we should have more recycling bins. And then part of me sort of goes, you know what? Give them recycling bags and say, here's a bag. Take your recyclables home. If it's garbage, we'll take your garbage. See if you can start taking some of this stuff. So to me, that's one way to solve an environmental problem.
We're here at Manning Park Ski Mountain, and behind me is one of the two lifts on the hill, both built in the 1960s. As you can see, there's approximately 200 centimeters of powder right now. Manning Park never has to make artificial snow, meaning that they save a lot of water and they're very sustainable. The activities offered here at Manning Park include skating, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, swimming, and of course, downhill skiing. Some spring and summer activities that Manning Park has to offer include hiking, biking, horseback riding, and canoeing.
It's like I'm originally from Calgary, and where I trained under when I was young like you, I trained under an architect who was an environmental planner as well, and we did the Banff and Jasper guidelines way back when. Yeah. And those guidelines way back when talked about small growth and scale and how you come down the street and how you retain trees, right? And Banff and Jasper were smart enough to implement that. Yeah. And then that's been copied by Whistler and all these other places over the years, and actually made better because there's been advances in all kinds of the way we shed snow and the way even in the materials we use for buildings. Coming out here and starting my own practice, it was very difficult to get people to buy into the idea of energy conservation and this sort of way of building that's green. But it wasn't difficult for resorts. To me, it's land first, people second, and buildings third. Buildings are the bells and whistles. We all look deep buildings, we all live in them, but the whole exercise, if you're talking about sustainable exercise, is connected to land, and it starts with that. Okay, because in the old days, what did people do? They just mowed everything down, all the trees down, created a giant parking lot. This is the old resort, giant parking lot where everybody drives right up to their front door, 5 feet away from it, right? But they're planning the houses and all the whether it's staff facilities or whatever to be sort of blend in with the environment so that it doesn't become you whack everything down.
Regionalism is an approach to design rather than a look or style. The regionalism approach aims to recognize the importance of a region's culture and design structures that are a modern-day reflection of that culture. At Manning Park, regionalism was used to design infrastructure that portrays the heritage of the land. This method of design is an effective way to counteract homogenization because it gives the resort a unique taste that can't be experienced elsewhere.
Intent of the owners is to reclaim that. So it's less parking. You need parking. But you don't need these huge, vast areas, right? So again, it's what are you trying to, especially in a resort, what are you trying to have people come to, right? They're coming to experience, whether it's the wild, nature, all those things. They're not there to look at a parking lot. When you think of going away for a holiday, where do you think of going? It's to the cottage, to the lake, to the mountains. It's always out to and what you think is pristine and nice, right? But there's an old, one of the fathers of environmentalism, Gary Snyder. He basically says that attitude should be your own backyard, right? Like it should be. Like we somehow think we have to go out to get it, but really it's right where we are.
I'm the mountain planning and environmental resource manager, and my job is to take recreation, which I'm very passionate about. Obviously, we as a company are very passionate about, and integrate this recreation into environmental design and strategies that ensure that while we grow our tourism business, we do it with a very, very light footprint on our natural environment, because ultimately, if we damage that natural environment, we, in many ways, take away the very reason why people come here. We have a very structured framework on how to manage climate change here in terms of diversifying, developing experiences that don't require snow if we are faced in the future in a climate with less snow. Our definition of adaptation is how we continue to modify and expand our winter experience to ensure that we do have enough snow, skier carrying capacity in the future to match our goals and the carrying capacity of the resort. It's very important because the bed base and the actual ski lift capacity needs to match. So, and I'm talking about snowmaking, I'm talking about summer grooming, where we flatten the runs more so we require less snow, and we move our lifts higher. We optimize our high elevation terrain. So again, I've mentioned diversification, which is about all the things we're doing that don't involve snow. There's adaptation, how we potentially work into a future with less snow. And then the most important one, and to your question, is mitigation. How do we reduce our operating footprint, our carbon footprint, our waste generation, and our use of hydroelectric energy? Our goal is to become a zero operating footprint, and that means no waste, no carbon emissions, no other emissions, which sounds very audacious and not believable, but we've already embarked on a number of projects that show that it is possible. For example, in the middle of our ski area, we have a renewable energy micro hydro system, which produces annually what our mountain operations consume annually. But again, to focus in on our specific overriding vision and goal, and that is to become a zero operating footprint. If we achieve that, many have asked, well, is that really going to matter? Because that's not where the rest of the world is going. But through our actions, if we can prove it out, that companies can get very close to a zero operating footprint and be more profitable doing it. Because we continually want to send a message to the marketplace that you can be more profitable, more competitive, doing just that. Then we really start to influence tourism, and tourism represents about 9% of the global economy. Well, interestingly here, we're very aware of our wildlife because of our summer tourism. We do wildlife bear-viewing tours. We actually do population counts. We've done DNA samples of bears, for example. My observation with skier is that because we partially open the forests and vegetate the ski runs, we actually create a more complex, diverse ecosystem than a tight, decaying forest. So we actually bring more wildlife in to our operating area than we otherwise would have. In winter, you have this benign blanket of snow, which really protects the flora and the fauna to a degree. But when you look at the actual footprint per guest, again, the amount of waste generated and emissions hosting the guest, one has to weigh that. And our winter guest will generate more waste and will generate more energy use, but will do far less, virtually no harm to the actual physical environment, because again, it's protected, whereas the summer guest could walk into a wetlands and do some damage. So they are different, but when managed well, the summer guest will have a smaller footprint. Out of, out of all the key areas where we serve food, we actually do the sorting. We don't allow the guest to go to the waste receptacles and try to figure out where to put what. We take it, we sort it by trained staff. So that's the game breaker on managing food waste. You've asked me about my legacy, and it is to be truthful, to show humility through a difficult journey. When you do, more people are just willing to work with you. Partnerships are probably in that legacy. I would say partnerships are really top of the mind because we've won over 30 national, international awards for the work we've done here. That being said, again, the job's not done, and that's a humility. But we would not have won any of those awards or had any of those successes without partnerships continually along the way.
Hi, I'm Michael Webster.
And I'm Alan Neal.
And together, we wanted to personally thank Rob Syniak, Mike Barker, and Arthur DeYoung for taking time out of their busy schedules to meet with us. It was a valuable learning opportunity and one that we will never forget.
We would also like to thank Professor Robert Brown, who supervised our study and provided excellent guidance throughout.
Thank you.